Bayern Munich claimed their Klassiker rights, United upset Liverpool, Barcelona and Madrid leave it late, PSG and Strasbourg play an enchanting draw as Torino topple Scudetto champions Napoli in an action-packed week of European football. So without further ado, let's get into it. We kick off on Friday evening where PSG hosted Strasbourg in a top of the table clash, and boy was it a good encounter. Really, really enchanting, really exciting, really fun end-to-end game. We saw at Pog de France, and it was Bradley Pogba who gave PSG the lead with a wonderful 1-2 with Desiree Doué, who's back from injury. They combined really well, and Barcola poked it past Mike Penders to give PSG the lead. However, Strasbourg, really responded well to the early goal. Pan Panicelli has been a standout player for Strasbourg. The Argentine striker has hit some real good form in his first season as well for Strasbourg, and he scored a wonderful goal past Chevalier, really strong header, which was assisted by Desiree Doué's brother, Guella Doué. And then soon after, it was Diego Moreira who gave Strasbourg lead. Valentino Barco, playing in midfield, was outstanding, and he delivered a wonderful chipped assist to Moreira, and who poked past Chevalier. A bit of questionable goalkeeping, but the two combined really well. And Moreira as well has been a standout player for Strasbourg since he's arrived. So really strong half. And before we knew it, it was Strasbourg, the visitors, who took a 3-1 lead when Panchalili uh, scored another really smart finish past Chevalier, and it looked like PSG were heading to yet another defeat. But with the firepower they possess, they came back very strongly. Gonzalo Ramos scored the penalty to make it 3-2 before Sene Mayulu, who was playing out of position, mind you, playing at right back, scored a wonderful goal. He is a real supreme talent as well. Been really, really impressed whenever I've watched him play across positions. He's been a standout player. Um, so that, culminated in a wonderful and a really exciting, dazzling 3-3 draw, uh, top of the table clash. And it meant that PSG and Strasbourg, both dropped points, and it gave Marseille the opportunity to go top of the table. We'll get onto them very soon. Looking into the other Liga fixtures, we we also had a key game in Nice. Nice and Lyon were right up the table, and it was a really crucial game. I think had Lyon won, they would have been top of the league. They would have definitely surpassed PSG at Strasbourg, but they succumbed to defeat in Nice. I felt for them honestly, very open game as well, really end to end. But Nice really sucker punched them. I wouldn't call it a smash and grab, but it was a rather fortuitous win in many phases really, because it was Lyon who dominated the play. Soch, the Czech midfielder, scored the brace, and he's been in really good form for Lyon. But it was Nice who really counterattacked really well, really potently. The key moment though was when Ainsley Maitland-Niles definitely missed a penalty when they were 2-1 up, and things could have been a lot different had he converted. And as you see, straight after, Nice capitalized. They scored some wonderful goals on the counter attack, and made Lyon pay really for just the lack of clinicality and cutting edge in the final third. So big win for Nice as well. They also climb up the table to fifth, I believe. Um, and lastly, another key game was at the Volderone, where Marseille hosted a struggling Le Havre, relegation threatened Le Havre, and it was a real smashing and a half by Roberto De Serbi's side. They were really, really dominant from the first minute to last, and it was led by their main man Mason Greenwood, who scored four. Le Havre as well, we scored two of the highest caliber of goals. You'll see this weekend two wonderful goals. First from Keshta, who was a wonderful solo goal. It was really remarkable how he's really squeezed it past Delange, and then of course a consolation goal by Toure on the volley. But Marseille were too good for them on the night. Really, they had a lot, way more quality, and of course the red card didn't help Leave's cause. It was a red. I think it was one of those though as well, which could have been, a bit 50-50. Who knows? Maybe another referee and VAR team not give it, but it was the final man. I think it was the right call, even albeit a little bit harsh, but that really totally changed the game state, and it was all Marseille, all one-way traffic ever since, and Marseille most definitely capitalized, and now they sit pretty top of the table with 18 points, and they are a point ahead of PSG, couple ahead of Strasbourg and Lens in second. So really action-packed, real fun games in Liga to kickstart. Moving on to La Liga, we had a lot of action here as well. Firstly, we head over to Barcelona where it was a wonderful game at the Olympic, and it ended 2-1 in favour in a Catalan derby, dare I say as well. Um, and a really good game, honestly. I feel for Girona firstly. My hearts do go out for them. I thought they were outstanding. One of the better visiting sides. Any side really who've played Barca, they really had a game plan, and I thought Michel did a wonderful job, and I thought they were more than worthy of a point. But uh, Ronald Araujo had other plans. It was Pedri who gave them Barca the early lead with a wonderful finish. Then Witsel equalized in sensational fashion, with an acrobatic finish. Barca kept searching for a winner, but Girona were well in the game, and I think they ultimately did rue the openings they got in the first half. Porto was through on goal a couple of times. He hit the post, and I think Van Aert was through as well once. Chesney made a couple of really smart saves and kept Barca in the game, because I think had Girona taken the lead as they should have done, I don't see a world in which Barca would have won the game. But unfortunately for them, as well as the defenders as well as Gazaniga and the whole defense played, it wasn't enough. Last minute heartbreak for Girona, but it was a much needed win. With El Clasico coming up next weekend, Barca had to simply win by no matter how, what fashion. And they just about got the job done, albeit in rather fortuitous fashion. Um, Moving on, we go to the Wanda Metropolitano where Atletico Madrid hosted Osasuna, and it was a much needed win for Atleti as well. Of course, they are fourth in the table. They're not as high as they should be, but with El Clasico coming up, and one of, if not both sides dropping points next week, they had to capitalize. They had to get past Osasuna, and they did, deservedly so, on the balance of play. Um, just about again. Firstly, I mean they should have scored. They scored a completely legitimate goal early on when Alex Baena slid it past Herrera, but I don't know how it got ruled offside. Honestly, that was real travesty. Made no sense to me how there was any interference in play. So that I felt was they were rather unlucky not to get that goal. But since they kept knocking on the door, and it was Thiago Almada, the super sub, who gave them all 3 points. And 3 points they richly deserved. I feel like with Atleti, honestly, I feel like they've played quite well in a lot of games. If you look at the games they've dropped points, they'll be really disappointed because they've dominated a fair amount of games. They've been the better side in so many occasions, but the lack of cutting edge and clinicality in the final third has cost them quite dearly. So now they can't afford to really drop more points. They have a couple of very tidy teams behind their back. Betis are playing some real good stuff. Espanyol, of course, are enjoying a wonderful start as well to the season. But of course, their ambition is to be up and around the top. Um, they're quite a way off it, but these wins help. So really important 3 points for Atleti. And lastly, as well, I'll also touch on a real fun game. I couldn't catch all of it, but I thought Villarreal Real Betis was a really good watch as well. Real fun. Two top teams, top managers, and a real enthralling 2-2 draw. But lastly, we head to Madrid in a Madrid derby at Getafe, where Real Madrid ran out 1-0 winners. Madrid historically have a really strong record against Getafe, even especially at their home as well. And they it was always going to be a tricky game, always going to be tough games. Never easy going away Getafe, but they just about got the job done. Um, Again, not very convincing. Contrary to any stats and whatnot, I thought they struggled again. I feel like their struggle against mid blocks, lower blocks continue. They remain an issue. I think creatively they need to do more to find ways to score goals. For the moment, for the time being, they're just about getting by. In a lot of games, you'd have seen they've won 1-0, 2-1s. It's been far from convincing, but they're getting the job done by the sheer quality they possess. And when you possess that individual quality, it will seep through at some point in the games, and that's what's been kind of Madrid's mantra so far. But I think Jabi Alonso, I expect more from him. I think he needs to do better given the resources they possess. So it'll be interesting to see how they progress as the season continues. But they need to do a lot more. It was a rather turgent game. Not a lot to really report. Not much happened up until the first standing off, of course, with Neom, the Getafe, La Liga legend, coming on, and he got red carded within under a minute. Um, it was a rash challenge and a deserved red card. And again, unfortunately, you just can't give those sort of margins to Madrid. With 15 minutes to go, they were always going to capitalize. The moment Getafe were down to 10, and it was Arda Güler who provided Kylian Mbappe. And of course, in the form that Mbappe is, he absolutely bagged. I think Güler had a good impact off the bench. I've been a bit critical of him. I think this season he's been okay, but there's more I think we can expect from him. But I thought he came on really well in this game and made the difference because it wasn't really looking likely at one moment if they were going to even break the deadlock, red card or not. And of course, there was a second standing off when Alex Sanchez went off. Again, for me, that was really harsh. Vinicius totally buyed that that red card, that booking. So I felt for Getafe there, but they nearly, very, very nearly leveled the scoring as well with 9 men in the very final dying seconds of the game. They had the big chance, and it was yet again that man Thibaut Courtois to the rescue. I mean, how often does he save Real Madrid? It's becoming very accustomed, to seeing him bail out Madrid on multiple occasions across competitions, and he did that again because it would have been quite a story had 9 man Getafe leveled late on, but Madrid held on to their life and they got the job done. Again, not pretty, but I think that's a familiar story in match day 9. Really, a lot of scrappy wins, but wins nonetheless for the big three in Spain. Heading on to the Bundesliga, where we had the biggest game in German football this past weekend. Of course, it was the Klassiker, where Bayern Munich hosted Borussia Dortmund. It was a top of the table clash as well. Dortmund, of course, were unbeaten in the competition, so it was a key game and a really fascinating watch. Of course, Bayern Munich have been for me the best team in the world this season. The only side who are undefeated. They have been absolutely on fire, and as expected, I think they got the job done. Dortmund were always going to be tough, given the fact that Niko Kovac, of course, played the back three, and they've been pretty sound defensively. Even going forwards, they've held their own. They've had fair few good results. So they've been compact. They've been good at times. So it's always going to be a low scoring affair, like in relative to Bayern's games, of course. And so it was. Of course, it was Kane who gave Bayern the lead from a corner that must have been really disappointing for Dortmund. Um, Very soft goal. You can't afford to concede really to Bayern in the form they're in. And KG thereafter as well. Karim Adeyemi had a big chance to level things as well at 1-0. Girassi was totally off colour. He was returning from a bit of a knock, so I'm not sure if he was fully fit, but he was rather disappointing. They needed him to turn up, if they were really going to get anything out of the game, but unfortunately not to be. And of course, it was Michael Olise who put Bayern 2 up and essentially killed the game. Yeah, real poor mistake by Joe Bellingham. And that allowed Olise to pounce and give Bayern a 2-0 and an unassailable lead, really, at that moment, given the game state. And from there onwards, of course, Julian Brand did pull one back. He came on at the stop. He had a good impact, um, but it was never to be enough, really. Bayern was still very comfortable, even at 2-1. I think, again, defensively, they've been really, really strong, very solid all season, and yeah, never really got the impression they were going to concede another. So this this lead off the game, and got the job done, and that meant that they sit pretty at the top of the table with a 5 point lead. Very healthy, playing some real good stuff. Of course, Leipzig as well got a good win, 2-1. Uh, we're hosting Hamburg. Yeah, it was. I think it was Baumgartner again with the double. He played really well, for what I saw. But yeah, really good win for Bayern Munich. They go from strength to strength. Honestly, they look so good. They're playing so well, and they're going to be very tough and tall order to stop. Even in the Bundesliga, I don't really see at present them dropping very many points, given the form they're in, given the depth. They have the way company has them playing, so real good stuff. Moving on to the Premier League, where the action-packed match week as well, lots of exciting games to comment on. We started in Nottingham Forest, where Forest hosted Chelsea, and of course, Ange Postecoglou was under immense pressure, and unfortunately, the pressure uh, was the doing for him, as he got sacked as well post game. But yeah, this game, honestly, firstly, the scoreline, it's a false reading if ever I've seen one. Honestly, I thought Forest played really well. That is also, again, if you guys have been watched Forest in the 9 games that Ange had them, honestly, again, I thought they were very unfortunate, unlucky not to score. But that's been a common theme in their games, especially under Ange. They've created enough, more than enough, in multiple occasions across competition, but their failure again in front of goal, the lack of cutting edge, the lack of decisiveness has hurt them. And again, against the quality Chelsea side, that's gonna obviously hurt them big time, and gonna cost you the game. And that's what happened really, because all of Chelsea's goals really came against a run of play. Forest were the better team in the first half. They should have scored, they didn't. And then, of course, it was Josh Achimpong who gave Chelsea the lead from a real strong header from a Neto cross. And very soon after, Neto, the provider, became the goal scorer with a nice finish from free kick. Even though Matt Sells, honestly, very questionable. He had a honking game. And then, of course, to add further misery, Reece James provided the final finishing touches to cap off a convincing win on the scoreline, because I don't think it was anything but convincing. But I think when you travel away to Forest, again, not an easy game, you take those, you take the results. And yeah, they got the job done. Again, not sure how Igor Jesus didn't score, Nico Williams, they both spurned glorious chances from point blank range. And ultimately, again, at this level, you can't be doing that again. And it's been too many games, especially under Ange, where Forest have been forced too wasteful, and that was unfortunately their doing on the day. But gave Chelsea a really important win. Um, they now look to hope to pick some form, some momentum after the Liverpool win, of course, and following the 2 defeats from against Brighton United, they need to definitely pick up the pace. A really good win for them. in the 3 p.m. kickoff, of course, Brighton beat Newcastle at the Amex. Brighton have Newcastle's number. It was that man again, Danny Welbeck with a brace. And yeah, Brighton honestly doing a wonderful job. Really good win. It was a really tightly contested game. I thought draw would have probably been a fair result. Again, very open. So Newcastle did well. Again, we know about their struggles away from home. But I thought relative to that, they actually performed quite well against a good side, a tricky side. As you can see, and Nick Woltemade as well has been unbelievable, of course, since he's arrived. He did level things up, but unfortunately wasn't to be enough. And yeah, Newcastle's away form continues to be an issue. But again, I thought still some good signs defensively. They look decent, they look good despite scoring, conceding two. So Tiao has been really good. Of course, Walter has been good. I think Elanga is a bit of a concern. He's not really landed so far in Tyneside. He needs to do a lot more. Of course, Tonali also picked up a knock, so that was a bit of a worry for Newcastle. But yeah, on Brighton, honestly, they're such a fun watch. I'm a big fan of them, of Hertzler, and again, just the depth they have, the quality they possess, the way they play, irrespective of opposition. They play some really good stuff, and again, a really well-rounded performance. A lot of good players, good performances out there, and Welbeck right now is leading the line really well. Most decisively putting the finishing touches because that's somewhat still been a concern with Brighton, but I think he's on really good form so far. So yeah, credit to him, credit to Brighton. They get another key win. Um, Burnley as well defeated Leeds. That's now 2 wins, I think, against fellow promoted teams. Both Leeds and Sunderland they've beaten at home. Really good win for them. Then we have to go for me to the game of the season so far, and one of the game of the season contenders really, which was Crystal Palace and against Bournemouth. And for me, these are two teams who are the two best coach teams. I think if I look at it, not just this season, I think last 12 months, the job that Oliver Glasner has done, as well as Anthony Iraola, they've both been unbelievable for their respective sides, and that really culminated in an unbelievable game. Honestly, with incredible scenes, really open. Of course, there was Krupi with Evan Olsen missing, who got the nod, and he is, of course, anyone who plays FM knows, of course, coming off a wonderful season at Lorient in League Two, and of course, which are also a Bournemouth club as well. As a Bournemouth own club, so he has really been really bright. In his start in the Premier League, he gave Bournemouth a lead from a corner. Yeah, he was unmarked in the back post. He tapped home. Of course, Dean Henderson had no chance. Then it was Bournemouth who went 2-0 to the good. Second goal was wonderful, half volley from the edge of the box. And again, put Bournemouth to 2-0 lead. Even before, though, I think it was a very open game. Again, Mateta had chances. Mateta, by the way, we'll get on to, but very open game. So Bournemouth rather fortuitous maybe to be 2-0 to lead, but the only difference was they took their chances in the first half. Palace didn't. Moving on to the second half, of course, Mateta pulled one back for Palace. Really good cross. It was by Munoz. It's been so good as wing back, so he's been unbelievable. And Mateta couldn't miss really from close range. Then Mateta leveled, and of course, it was then Ryan Christie who gave Bournemouth the lead in the dying minutes and what looked to be the winner. Honestly, it was a wonderful goal as well, really well worked. Ben Doak to Marcus Tavernier and Tavernier then to pull back to Ryan Christie for his first goal of the season, and it looked to be that would be enough. But unfortunately for the Cherries, they got a late dagger, courtesy Mateta, in a penalty for me that never was. Again, what I don't like is the inconsistencies. Uh, it was Diakate and Gray who was at it in a corner, and again, I thought Diakate it was just a lot of it was a scrap, and as we've seen in multiple times, both defenders holding each other, getting a hold of each other, and pulling each other in their shirts and whatnot. But we see it; it's a common occurrence in set pieces and corners. But again, to be penalised for it for me is very harsh. I don't think there was a penalty because Guehi, was also he also had a hold of Diakate. He was also pulling his shirt and pulling him down. So very very unfortunate for Bournemouth. Yeah, really conceding a penalty that never was. But I think on the balance of play, a probably fair result um, for Palace. Of course, not to forget as well, even after the 3-3 in the very last second of the game, Mateta had a glorious opportunity to give Palace a famous, comeback win, but he missed from 5 yards out rather inexplicably. I'm not sure how he got it so wrong, but again, on the balance of play, I thought Bournemouth definitely deserved something of the game as well, and Palace definitely did. So Palace were the better team, just about, but yeah, really entertaining game. Mateta, big credit to him again. He had an unbelievable game. It's not just a hat trick, 11 duels. I think he had 11 shots as well, which is utterly ridiculous. Uh, you know, he had three big chances missed, so it was, the final form of chaos. And that's why I love Mateta. Like, he's just so dynamic. He makes things happen, whether it's in a positive or negative light. And of course, he can be a bit wasteful, but he is absolute box office entertainment, and yeah, really happy for him how he's coming along. But good point for Bournemouth as well. Unfortunately, had they held on, they would have gone top of the league for some moment of time, but that wasn't to be. Moving on to some of the other action on Saturday, of course, it was Manchester City who hosted Everton, and they led and got a 2-0 comfortable professional win for them. Got the job done. Wasn't pretty. I thought first half was quite even. Everton will definitely rue the chances they had better. Missed from point blank range. Um, Donnarumma made a sharp stop as well from NDA, but I thought in the second half, really City took control of the game. They really, yeah, really changed the gears and really got going big time. So got the job done. Of course, there's that man again, Erling Haaland, who cannot stop scoring. Again, utterly ridiculous form he's in. It was Nico O'Reilly who provided him a very similar goal, to the one he scored away at Monaco. A wonderful cross and an even better header from Holland. He held it one, but I want to give a big shout out to Foden as well because the pre-assist was just as good for the opener. Really wonderful through ball by Foden, who played in deeper position, and I thought he was unbelievable in the second half. He really pulled the strings and he was pivotal to City, from getting this win. And again, the second goal really killed off the game. Savinho with a normal, short pass with Haaland's goal, which had a little slight deflection that was enough to beat Pickford and give City a 2-0 lead, and there was never really any coming back from that. But really strong performance again from City. I think they're being slept on, I think they've been really good, especially defensively. There's always question marks and doubts over their credentials, but they've been keeping clean sheets. Now I think it's Donnarumma kept Donnarumma's fifth clean sheet in 8 games. So he's been, of course, a big addition. I think he's really showed up things. Diaz, Nunes, big shout out to Nunes and O'Reilly as well. They've been in really a rich vein of form. Both have really excelled in fullback positions, and I think they've been really consistent as well, which is not easy to do. To their credit, given the fact they're not natural midfielders. So that was top. I think Nico Gonzalez as well was outstanding. Really, just orchestrating the play from holding midfield. He was really unreal. Foden second half was really turned it up, and then of course Erling Haaland. When you have someone of his quality, he will make you pay. And again, so even off the bench, Bernardo Silva came on really well. So great win. Turkey as well is back now, and that's the thing with City. A lot of players were injured. Now they're coming back. Turkey, Marmoush, Ait Nuri, they're all back. I think Kusanov and Rodri are the only ones missing out, but I think they're expected to be back very soon as well. So City looking good, good win for them. They continue their good form. Moving on to Sunderland again. Sunderland got a really important win against Wolves. Yeah, Wolves. Honestly, again, I feel for them. They're honestly again not playing that badly. But they can't really finish to save their lives. Honestly, in front of goal, they look rather shambolic. They really are just missing a lot of cutting edge. And at this level, no matter who you're playing, it's gonna hurt you and it's gonna punish you. And that's what Sunderland did. I mean, even the Wolves were the better side. They just sucker punched and scored the decisive goals, which is enough. And of course, moving on to a big game on Saturday evening, it was Fulham um, at Craven Cottage who hosted Arsenal, and Arsenal again getting the job done. Just about 1-0 corner goal, goal from a set piece. I mean, it's a familiar story with Arsenal. Nothing we haven't seen. Um, I thought they were a bit slow, honestly, but that was to be expected. After international breaks, it's never easy to fully adjust back into the Premier League intensity straight away. But yeah, I thought they did well. Um, they got the job done. I thought they were the better team, just about. And of course, there was a Gabriel assist and a Trossard again free at the back post to give Arsenal decisive 3 points. Yeah, just really professional job done in and out for Arsenal. That this game though also meant there was two successive games now where they didn't face a shot on target, and that's the first time that's happened. I think in the Premier League or for Arsenal since the Invincible season in '03 or 04. So again, the defense is just going from strength to strength. They are really watertight at the back. Um, yeah, I don't, and it's got nothing to do with Fulham again. Whilst Fulham were missing some players as well and whatnot, I just think defensively, I don't see a world in which they're going to concede many goals. So that is just a huge, huge advantage that they have over every opposition in the league. Um, yeah, so it's and again going forwards with how overpowered their set pieces are, how frequently they're scoring from them. It's looking like it's just enough. But I still think again they need to do more in open play. I've really, for me, bar the Newcastle game, I thought that was their best performance of the season. Bar that, I don't think they've played well in open play at all. They've not created enough, and they're most definitely not converting. And they're not converting because they're not creating enough. That this this narrative that that they're playing well enough in open play, I don't agree with. If because the proof is in the pudding. If they were, they would be scoring goals from open play, but they don't even look likely. And again, yeah, I think so that still needs to be addressed because I still don't think you'll be able to get away with just set piece goals every game week. I think the better sides will be able to weather that off, and I still think Premier League sides should be doing better, given we know how reliant, over reliant Arsenal are at set pieces. I think there's always room for improvement. But really good game for Arsenal again. Defensively, they were outstanding. The whole back line has been really good all season, and I thought Saka had one of his better games as well. So good win for Arsenal. They go top of the league again, and we'll tell you where they find themselves at very soon. But yeah, huge win for them. Moving on to Sunday's fixtures, we had Tottenham Hotspur hosting Aston Villa in the afternoon game, and Villa again Unai Emery getting the job done and getting the better of Thomas Frank yet again. Thomas Frank remains winless against Emery. Yeah, really, really, I thought it was a really tight game. Honestly, not much to differentiate the sides. Um, but we saw goals of the highest order. Of course, it was Tottenham who got the lead, courtesy Rodrigo Bentancur from a cross, deep cross, from a Kudus ball and Paulinho the layoff and Bentancur finish from close range. And I was hoping, especially after the early goal, that Spurs can kick on. Um, because I feel like against, especially sides like Villa are perfect examples. For me, like firstly, I wasn't happy with the lineup again because I don't know what the obsession is with Paulinho Bentancur pivot. Um, I think again against the top sides away from home or just top sides in general, you can get away with that. Against sides like Villa again, who haven't been the greatest, even though they're in good form, you got to take the game to them. And I thought Villa were there for the taking. Villa were gettable. It's not like Villa played a unreal game. But again, that those two in midfield hold them back. Creatively, they struggle, and their build up again, both being non-ball playing midfielders. It's not pretty. It's not a pretty watch, and that's what Spurs were. Unfortunately, a lot of just set pieces, throw-ins, really little to go off. Like in open play, they were really poor. I thought Simmons has probably his worst game in the Spurs shirt, and Kudus again got. I thought Kudus got really well pocketed, by Luka Digne. He did a wonderful job. But of course, Villa, responded really well going behind. It's one of those days for them, importantly, I guess, because yeah, they really had to score two goals of the highest order to get the win. Because it didn't really look like at any point that Villa had a lot of goals in them, or they didn't threaten to score at like any real points, especially with how good Tottenham are defensively as well. But for those Morgan Rogers who scored a screamer past Vicario, and then second half it was an even better goal, the eventual winner, a wonderful pass by Matty Cash, an even better touch by Luca Digne who laid it off to Buendia to finish on his weak foot, from the edge of the box, just outside the box, in fact, and give Villa all 3 points. A really good point, 3 points for them. Not sure they deserved it, but they got the job done, and I think that's equally important, really, given the slow start they had to the season. So really big 3 points for them. And for Villa, honestly, I have to shout out. I thought again Dino and Cash were really good, but I thought again this man right here is for me again one of the most underrated players in the league. Boubacar Kamara is it's just a Rolls Royce of a midfielder. There's a lot of talk about Morgan Rogers. Tielemans had an unreal season last time around as well. Onana has always spoken highly of, but I thought he's always for me been very underrated and underappreciated. But I think Villa fans will know the real essence of him, the value he provides. Because I thought he was sensational. He was really exceptional, both on and off the ball. The way he breaks up play, where he progresses play again, really top class. So yeah, big 3 points for Villa, and then heading on to lastly the Super Sunday key game uh, in the Premier League last weekend. Of course, it was Liverpool at Anfield hosting Ruben Amorim's Manchester United, and yeah, wow, what a game! Liverpool succumbed to their fourth successive defeat in all competitions, their third successive defeat in the Premier League, which also coincidentally meant that Arne Slot, this will be for firstly a black spot in his stain and his Liverpool legacy, as well as probably just Liverpool's legacy in general, because after nearly 12 months in charge, Ruben Amorim finally registered two successive wins for Manchester United, and for that to come at Anfield, is an even bigger statement. It's yeah, really unbelievable. Who would have thought, at Anfield of all places? But I can't say that Manchester United didn't deserve it because they absolutely did. Of course, it was Brian Mbeumo who opened the scoring. Really good finish. Um, Van Dijk very questionable defending by him. I don't know what he was doing, but Mbeumo capitalized a little bit for being a bit harsh. I think Mamadashiri, didn't do the greatest of job. But then again, you can't really compare him to Allison. I think it's unfair to do that because I think Allison probably saves that. But anyhow, United got an early lead, and I thought they played really well. They were very comfortable. Even in the first half, they should have made it 2-0, and I think that would have been game set and match there and then. I think it was around the 25th minute. Bruno had a glorious chance. He was free, just inside the box, and he hammered the post. And then, of course, it was an open game. Liverpool were huffing and puffing, but again, same issue for them. We'll get on to. But of course, Gakpo hit the post as well in the first half, and then as the second half came along as well, Liverpool stepped it up a little bit. But I thought United, you were equally in the game. They equally had chances. De Ligt, missed from close range as well. Gakpo hit the post again. He hit the post twice. He hit the second time around a lot more fortunate. There was a cross that went wrong and it just kind of deflected it onto the post and whatnot. But of course, it was Gakpo who was probably had his best game this season. I don't know what kind of happens to him against United, but he always turns it up. And he scored, of course, he scored the leveler. It was Chiesa who provided for the Dutchman, and Gakpo really finished, couldn't miss from close range. But then came the crowning, the decisive moment, and it was Harry Maguire of all people. And it's very, for me, very telling as well. It's wonderful in a way with Maguire because he's been so clutch as well. Honestly, he scored so many big goals, and it was him again. A cross by Bruno, and Liverpool were all over the place. Honestly, their set pieces, both attacking and defending wise, atrocious. At the moment they're all over the place. Like even had Maguire missed, I think they were like three man just waiting to pounce. So someone would have scored, if not Maguire. But of course, he's such a wonderful head of the ball, and he couldn't really miss. And he made Liverpool pay and gave United all 3 points. And 3 points is much deserved because, as I said, both teams had their chances. But again, in the balance of play, I thought United were the better team, given the context, of both teams where they are at, the financial spending that Liverpool kind of had this summer, where both managers are at, relative to their expectations. It was a good performance, and they got the job done. Honestly, on Liverpool, well, firstly, I want to start with United because they deserve a lot of credit. Lamens has been a revelation, even though he's only 2 games in, so we should be aware of that. But I thought he was really outstanding. Just the fundamentals that he possesses, just doing the basics, the simple things right, and that gives automatically a lot of stability to United. You can tell like the back line is a lot more at ease with him at the back, so he was really good defensively. I thought all the entire back three, even Maguire, like goal aside as well, they all had a really good game. Wing backs again, I thought Ahmad had one of his better games that I've seen in recent times. Casemiro did enough. Bruno in the first half was outstanding, but second half he totally fell off a cliff. Um, yes, he scored. Sorry, he assisted rather from a corner, but he was really bad second half. Of course, Mbeumo was decisive with his opening goal, but I thought again Matheus Cunha as well deserves a huge shout out. He may not have had a goal or assist to show for his efforts, but his endeavour, his heart, his desire, the way he pushed United, up the pitch, the way he pressed like a madman, really relentless, the way he kept hold of the ball. I thought it was a really really top performance from him as well. So really just all around, I thought everyone really played well, which has been a rarity under this manager. So yeah, I guess now with United, the key question is can they build from it? I still have my reservations. They don't have it easy. I think the next game is home Brighton, and then they go away Nottingham Forest. So yeah, next 2 games are quite challenging for Brighton. Have a unbelievable record as well at Old Trafford. So we'll see what they're really made of next weekend, honestly, because there's no point, of winning at Anfield if you draw, if you lose to Brighton. Um, but I still think that's highly plausible, and I think that will be very decisive. So if they can't really build up from this win, then I don't know what good is it. But on Liverpool again, they just have endless problems. Honestly, I can stay here all day going on about their problems. But again, defensively, Kirk has been a shambles. Connor Bradley again for me is not Liverpool level at all. And that's just been further exposed this season. to think that some Liverpool fans had the audacity to compare him with Trent, or that he will replace Trent, and now you're seeing the real value of Trent. And of course, I don't want to bring in Trent because he's a generational right back. For me, he's one of one. The quality he possesses, and the biggest loss, that probably none of us anticipated was Trent in build up. Because if you look at Liverpool last season, it was Trent played a huge role. Like they were building up through their fullbacks, and Trent had an enormous play at that. And this season, with him gone, obviously it's not a surprise they look a shadow of themselves. They can't build up, and then anyways, Kirkhead and Bradley are not the fullbacks for that. The midfield is a gaping hole. They don't have a midfield at all, and that's very much the case in every game. Doesn't matter who they're playing. They're wide. It's like a donut, There's you can literally play through them. There's no one. There's no coverage. I thought Gravenberg had probably one of his poorest games in the longest time. I have no clue how McAllister continues to start. He's been atrocious this season. Um, Szoboszlai was okay, but again, even going for attack, Salah was invisible, anonymous. It was very damning, actually, the fact that Frimpong came on for 5 minutes and he created more than Salah did in the entire 85 minutes. He actually put it on a plate for Gakpo to equalize, but Gakpo, missed a free header. But I think, unfortunately, again with Salah, like I think Father time is up. Really, that's what it is because as prolific as he has been, age catches up to the best of them all and catches up to everyone, and that's what I feel it is with Salah. Watch him. Yes, I do think he's playing, as a touchline winger. That's not what his forte is, and that's not where his strength lies. But still, you expect better from him. He had a big chance in this game as well to score when they were 1-0 down, but he put it over the bar. So he's just been so poor, honestly. I think at this point, United are definitely, sorry, Liverpool are definitely better off without him starting. Even Gakpo, I don't think was all that good, even though he was the best attacker on the night. And as for the £130 million man, the most expensive player in Premier League history, he continues to struggle whilst Newcastle are eating good with Nick Waltermode being unbelievable. So yeah, honestly, with Isak, like at this point, there's no more excuses. We're a couple months into the season. The fitness wise, as well, he's played some games for Sweden as well, and of course for Liverpool as well. But he doesn't look any better. He missed a big chance as well today when Konate played him in. And I don't want to be too harsh because I still think again he's not the problem. There's not enough service. If he's just getting one big chance a game, which is sort of been the equation in the last few weeks, I don't think that's enough for your £130 million man. Like you don't pay that sort of money to deliver one chance, to create one chance for him. But given the pressure he's in and the team is in, they badly need him to be clinical, to be decisive. But even aside from the chance he missed, he was anonymous, he was invisible, he got pocketed, and yet again, when Ekitike came on, it made a huge difference, and you can see the impact he provided. So for me, like by the passing day, it's all the more baffling why they signed him or why they signed both him and Ekitike because Ekitike has been unreal, and because of I guess the price tag and being the big money signing, the Slaughter continues to insist with Isak starting when in reality, given just on the field performances, Ekitike for me should be the first name on the team sheet. He's been Liverpool's best player this season, yet he's I don't know somehow inexplicably coming off the bench. So there's just so many questions unanswered. You can look at every phase. Liverpool are slacking. They're lacking behind big time. There's not a single good game. I think I've watched Liverpool play this season. Not a single convincing win, even though they had like 7 wins uh, in a row to start the season. None of them were deserved. None of them were convincing in the slightest. And yeah, they their struggles continue. Words again was invisible. even though he came on okay, better than most games, but Chiesa was really bright, Ekitike as well. But yeah, I just think it comes down to the manager. When there's so many players, underperforming, as you said, when you watch Liverpool again, the players for me look lost. There's no role clarity again. There's no structure. There's no there's no semblance of a team there. Like they don't have a pattern of play. They don't have a style of play. They don't have an identity. They're not good in any phase of play at the moment. Like they're just all over the place. So it really begs the question what Arne Slot is doing. Uh, you know, in the coaching ground, like what is he actually doing? Because it's just inexplicable. It's unacceptable. Given the fact you just can't spend 450 million pounds and get worse, which Liverpool have most definitely have. They're just so off it. But let's see if he can turn things around. I don't personally envisage it at all. There's nothing to suggest, and I'm not even just going off this early season play. I just think again all of 2025, I think they have a very middling record. They haven't really played well. Neither have they got the results, and that's for good reason because I just don't think he knows what he's doing. You know, all the signings he's got, I don't think he has a clue. He has an idea how to integrate them, how to best fit all of them. So there's just too much trying to happen, of course, and I don't see it ending it well. But for let's see how he goes about things in the coming weeks. They have to turn it around because shall have a look at the Premier League table now, and they find themselves 4 points behind league leaders Arsenal. Liverpool, of course, finishing right now in fourth. Um, and on the title chances as well, I don't fancy them at all. And I was very persistent with that since game week one. I was not convinced since the Bournemouth game till now. Like they've not played well enough. Honestly, I think it's a miracle that they have 15 points. They should count their lucky stars. Because for me, in factuality, they should have like around 7, 8 points. They should be in this, mid-table bang on at the very best. Because that's how they played, and yeah, for them to even be where they are is quite remarkable. But let's see what they can muster up. It's a tall order, um, but I think it's looking less and less likely by the day. Honestly, I don't see any well for Liverpool. Moving on to their title rivals, of course, Arsenal go from strength to strength. They've had the toughest kind of opening fixtures, so they look good. They're sitting pretty at the top of the table. Manchester City as well should not be counted out at all. Just 3 points behind. And Bournemouth, of course, unfortunately late draw. Had they not, they would have been second above City. But yeah, they're doing an unbelievable job. But United as well. Honestly, this table, as you can see, so open. Like there's a lot to play still. Goes without saying. But one win and you can really leapfrog like 5, 6, 7 places. So I think like this league for all teams, like it's all about just building. Even a couple of wins, any sort of sequence patches of wins can really propel you up the table, like no matter where you are. So still, again, United are just 2 points behind Liverpool. They're only 6 points behind Arsenal, which is not a lot. 3 points behind City. So I tell you how open the league is, which is good. I think finally it's playing out as it should be, being very competitive. No result, can be counted out. So yeah, I think that's been good. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Very competitive, you know, relegation race as well. I think honestly the promoted teams like being so much better. All of Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland have done really well, and they've all played well. They've got points. They've given real good games to everyone. So I think that's also really impacted the league in a positive light. So yeah, really another awesome week of Premier League action. And lastly, we will head on to Serie A, where it was again another really action-packed week of football. We kick off in Torino, in Turin, where Torino toppled Scudetto, the reigning Italian champions, Napoli, and yeah, you could call it an upset because it was, honestly, Torino, of course, hasn't been in the best of form as well. They've been, especially defensively, they've been leaking goals, but they got the job done, honestly, and it was the former Napoli man, Giovanni Simeone, who gave Torino the lead and was the decisive goal, the one and only goal in the game. Uh, Napoli, for me, in this game again was, as you know, like I've said this previously as well, I'm not a fan of the 4-1-4-1. Again, I think Conte is really trying to shoehorn that system. He's really trying to make it work, and it's still early days. Potentially they can get better at it. They can make it work, but I have huge reservation that I don't think it's working. I don't think it's optimal. For the wingers they have for McTominay, who's the best bet for McTominay was missing this game, and I think that was a big blow as well. But yeah, just given the way they want to play, the players they possess, I think we're back for like a 4-3-3 would be much better, with wingers, with Neres, with Lang. But I thought Napoli were very toothless, and it comes to this man, unfortunately, he's been very, very underwhelming. Lorenzo Luca got bought from Udinese. Very, very disappointed in what he showed so far, not just in this game, but he was really anonymous. And he's just not good enough. I mean, the drop from Hoyland to Luca is head and shoulder. That I think Napoli are missing Lukaku big time as well. They desperately need him back because I don't think Luca can lead the line in too many more games. He's been really poor, and ultimately that was the difference. They had their chances, they had the moments, but it wasn't to be enough. De Bruyne came close a couple of times from the edge of the box, but they didn't have the striker to put the ball in the back of the net. That cost them. Of course, there was late drama as well. Noah Lang, we thought did equalize in the final minutes of the game with a wonderful cross by Politano. In fact, the wonderful shot actually. It was a really good shot, and Israel, who had a great game, made a smart save. But Noah Lang, whilst he did poke home from close range, he was inexplicably offside. Again, not sure how you can be offside from the position he was at. So that was really poor. But yeah, that meant that Napoli succumbed to defeat, and it was their third straight away loss in all competitions as well. Like you can see, which is quite telling. So not good signs there. Big win for Torino. Great performance from them. Moving on to Roma, where we had a big game. And this was again another top of the table clash with how good Gasperini's Roma have been. But yeah, really good encounter again at Stadio Olimpico, and it was Inter who ran out 1-0 winners and deserved winners for me at the end. Yeah, not a lot, between the two sides, but I think that for me, gives Inter all the more credit because for those Boni who gave them the lead, he has been really good. Of course, Christian Chibu got him from Parma, and I think he's been a real shining light. When you look at some of the other strikers around, we just spoke about Lorenzo Luca. He's head and shoulders above him, and I'm not just saying this in current form. I think just as footballer, he's looking like the real deal. He's still very young, but that he's having a real positive impact. So he gave into the lead. Um, you know how much I love Thriller, but I think he should have saved that. Who knows what could have happened had he saved Bonnie's effort, but that gave Inter like all they needed, because defensively as well, they've been really strong in recent weeks. I think the backline is gelling well. Akanji has been a really impressive addition. He's brought a lot of steel and guile and just the experience that he has. Playing at as the RCB is perfect for what Inter needs. So he's been really good, and since then again, Roma did go into the game. They had their moments. Dybala had some chances, um, but honestly, it was I never thought they were going to score because also the lineup as well I wasn't a fan of. It was quite bold for none of Dobrik or Ferguson to start. So they lacked a vocal point, right, and that kind of cost them as well. Not that Dybala was awful, but again, without a striker, like they always looked unlikely. They looked against the odds for Roma to score. And so it was really they really never really looked like scoring. Sommer had a decent game, and Inter did enough of the professional performance. They got the job done. But I thought they were worthy winners. The way they're soaking pressure as well. I think that's a good sign of a top side as well. And yeah, really impressed honestly by Chibu. I had my reservations at the appointment, how ready he was, but I think he's doing a really good job the way he has them playing. Um, yeah, again, not just this game, just the form they've been in. They've been really sharp. So big win for Inter as well in their Scudetto push. It may be early on, but these head-to-heads always, worth so much. So yeah, I think they count for a lot. Moving on to Como, the early kickoff on Sunday, and Como for the first time in the history beat Juventus, and yeah, very well worthy winners at the end. It was a very tight game. Honestly, I thought Juventus played better than I've seen them in recent weeks. You know, performances that finally Igor Tudor played a back for, and I thought it actually worked decently well. Um, but equally, when we talk about formation, that's what I love about Cesc Fabregas because he's so tactically creative. Um, he played a back three, which of course that's not their normal usual formation, but I think that tells you about his tactical, nuance and how well he knows his football, and I thought that did make a difference. It was harder for Juventus to break them down, really. Even though Juve had their moments, Yildiz came close. For David was okay, but ultimately it was first Nico pass. It was Kemp who of course provided the opener with a outstanding ball by Nico Paz, and Kemp's really couldn't miss from point blank range. Um, right now, everything is going through Nico Paz. He's that good, and the second goal was quite unbelievable, very decisive. It was Maximo Perrone who laid off Paz, but Nico Paz almost ran the length of the field before curling his effort into the bottom left corner. And yeah, I mean, what an incredible player he is. Real supreme talent. He's at the heart of everything Como is doing and the whole project. Not just again this game, all season, the entirety of last season, he was just so decisive. So it's been unbelievable. And big credit to him because yeah, it's not easy. The consistency is what's for me most impressive, as well as his physical attributes. He's still a young man, but his pace, his power, his strength to really to ward off defenders as well. Really, it's really impressive. I think so. Huge credit to him. I have no doubts he'll be back at Real Madrid next season. And it'll be yeah, very interesting to see as well how him and kind of Goulet play. If they play together, if they'll compete for the same position. But I honestly thought even last season, I thought they could have bought him in for like for this season because he was equally good last season. But yeah, Madrid's I guess loss is Como's gain, and Como go from strength to strength. I really hope they can pick up the pace as well. Of course, they've been slightly disappointing this season, given the expectations I had from them. They've dropped some points they really shouldn't have home to Cremonese, I think away to Genoa. So a couple of games where they should have seen out games, they couldn't quite do it. But let's see. Hopefully they can pick up the pace and get a run of performances, run of games together, and look for the wins because they're good enough. Honestly, on a quality level, that side should be pushing for Europe. They have the manager, they have the depth to do it. So Really good win for them. Juventus struggle continue. Honestly, not very good, not very inspiring performance-wise or results-wise. Moving on to Bergamo, where there was another really fun game. Atalanta hosting Lazio. And man, yeah, Atalanta. Honestly, I don't know if I want to call it, just luck, the lack of luck, or what, because this is again been a common theme. I thought they were outstanding. They played really well, but there's been a good few games now where they've failed to find the back of the net despite dominating play and creating all the XG, all the big chances. Again, I've no clue how they didn't score. That Costa hit the post. Lookman should have scored. He missed a free header. He forced Providel into a couple of really sharp saves. They had chances below, honestly. Like Ahano nearly scored as well. So they had a host of chances, but they right now again I think they're letting themselves down in front of goal because it's one of those that what could have been, because had they scored, had they taken their chances, it could have been a different story. But yeah, Lazio very fortunate, honestly, to get the point. They did nothing. I don't like the appointment. As I said, for me, it's very stale. It's very backwards. Things have just gone very stagnant at Lazio, and I don't think Sarri was the right man to bring back. They need fresh ideas. Personally, I wasn't even the fan of them sacking Marco Baroni. And whilst they did capitulate end of last season, I thought that's still a very incredibly harsh sacking. And now again, if you're going to make that decision, you have to bring in someone fresh, someone new. I don't think Sarri is the answer. They look really, really poor in a lot of games, not just against Atalanta, in this fixture. And again, if not for Providel, they would have lost, and they should have lost this by 2 or 3. So feel for Atalanta. They need to pick up these points because I think they've played more than well enough to get the wins, but I think these drop points are going to cost them come the end of the season. Um, because yeah, they should just have a lot more points. And lastly, Sunday evening was a big game in San Siro where AC Milan, of course, high-flying Milan hosted former manager as well, Pioli's Fiorentina, struggling Fiorentina side. Um, and Milan again got the job done just about. Uh, were ran out as 2-1 winners. Honestly, I thought Fiorentina did a good game. They played fairly well. They of course got the lead, courtesy Robin Gosens. Um, yeah, they're a good side. I think again, whilst their form has been very poor relative to expectations, I think it's not from a lack of playing poorly. They've played well enough, but again, they've also lacked cutting edge. They've also, I think, leaked some more goals than they should have. So that's why the results haven't really been there for them. A lot of have been curtailed to draws and whatnot, but it looked good for a long period of time. They looked good, especially when they were 1-0 up. It was Rafael Leao first who scored his first Serie A goal, his first goal at San Siro, his first home goal in 18 months. A really good goal, really strong finish in the bottom right corner from the edge of the box. And Milan really needed that moment of brilliance. Not that they were playing poorly, but the goal wasn't necessarily coming. Like there was no certainty it would come, if not for the first goal. And the second goal, uh, for me again, I feel for Fiorentina because it was a penalty that never was. Really incredibly soft penalty, and Leao couldn't miss. And yeah, big point, big 3 points for Milan. As you can see, they move 1 point clear of Inter at the top of the table, and they look really good. Again, that's a fairly good performance, despite the goals coming a bit late and a bit controversial fashion. But I thought they played well. Richie, good to see him back in the 11. He's had a positive impact. Very impressed with Barca Saudi. I thought he was a standout player, really strong. Of course, he's covering the suspended Estupinian, but he was really good. Modric again, unbelievable, and good win. I thought really strong win for Milan, and now we shall have a look at the top of Serie A. And it's very tight, very competitive, much like the Premier League. Honestly, it's anyone's best guess who's going to go all the way in this one, because yeah, a lot of contenders. Even Atalanta have 11 points. I mean, they should be 16, 17 points. The draws they've had. I mean, the Como one as well, I thought was very open. They could have easily won that. Yeah, so it's still very open. Not that I'm saying Atalanta for the Scudetto, but I think these top three are the really ones. Roma, I think, will be. I expect them to finish in the top four. I think. Who knows? You can't count them out. They're just a point behind, but I'm still unsure if they have what it takes to become title credentials. But the top three, I think, will be competing for the Scudetto. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to come down to, I think what it's going to come down to is the fact that Inter Napoli, of course, play Champions League football. They have those midweek games, whereas Milan are playing one game a week, and I think that's going to prove decisive in this race. Napoli already, you can see, are struggling for me in terms of managing and handling um, these, 2 games a week. Conte is, even though they have a good squad, like it's not easy. It's not easy to balance, and Conte historically has struggled. So that'll be very fascinating to see how that goes. But very very open to anyone's best guess who's going to go all the way. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. So do let me know in the comments below who you back in Italy to go all the way, and not just in Italy, in the Premier League, La Liga, Liga, and the Bundesliga. Which teams have caught your eye? Which players have impressed you in the season and this game week? And yeah, if you have enjoyed the video, do make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And take care, love, and guidance. And I'll see you in the next one.